This needs to be talked about.
I was actually born in the States, but I was raised in Canada, and that's where I live now. So
how is the Communist Republic of Canada going, or is that too harsh?
So when people used to say that, I'd be like, no, okay,
just
calm
pull
down.
that up to your mouth, just
up to my mouth a little bit
more.
There we go. How's that?
So this is about,
I used to say that's a little bit too harsh, but especially
Canada,
with the assisted suicide regime that's been metastasizing and growing ever since it came in 2016. Canada is, I think, objectively in very rough shape right now. Some of your listeners will know, your viewers will know.
So I think he's being a bit kind to Canada here. What he's talking about with the assisted suicide regime, the quote-unquote assisted suicide, doctors in Canada have begun euthanizing people at request. They've begun just euthanizing people whenever they want them to be euthanized. And the Netherlands, this happened after this clip, so I don't think he's going to talk about it here, but it needs to be talked about. The Netherlands has just legalized euthanizing disabled children. Their claim is that they're going to do this only for children that are like days away from dying. They have incurable conditions. It's absolutely awful, but no one ever means that when they say it. No one ever means that when they say it. We're moving into a second age of eugenics.
What is it? Norway that has eliminated all children with Down syndrome.
Iceland has not had a child born with Down syndrome since the mid-1950s.
Yeah. So where does that stop? It doesn't stop.
It doesn't. They'll just. I mean, this is the thing that we keep talking about. Kind of as the central run through of this whole channel. Christian culture is a cohesive whole. Christian morality is a cohesive whole. You cannot begin undermining parts of it. It's a Jenga tower. You can take out some parts, and then maybe the tower will keep standing, kind of. But at a certain point, you take out too many parts, and the whole thing falls apart. And in this case, we took out the Jenga block that was abortion. And now we took out the Jenga block that was killing yourself is wrong. And the whole damn tower is coming crashing down right now around us as we're finding ourselves in a situation where we are returning to the morality of the Nazis. Where we are killing the innocent.
Yeah. So I think we should probably continue this video, but I'll just say this it just makes it seem clear that the Catholic Church is the biggest protector of human dignity in the world today. So that'll help people see the truth of Catholicism.
Jonathan's going to go over this in more detail, though. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Know that in 2015, our Supreme Court mandated that they legalize assisted suicide. They started to steadily move away from calling it assisted suicide because suicide, of course, is a trigger word for many people, obviously.
Yep.
So now they call it medical aid in dying or MAID, which makes it sound far more compassionate, right? Like your loved one will get put to death like a household pet. And now they've actually they legalized it for those with mental illness. And then this month they delayed it for a year to get it right. Because all the horror stories have been trickling in about people opting for assisted suicide because they're poor, because they're disabled, because they can't afford the care that they need.
Yeah, I was about to say.
So I got a buddy lives up on the reservations. Well, he doesn't live on the reservation anymore, but he lives up in Canada, right? And he said that he stopped talking to his doctor about depression. He has depression. He's still depressed. He was depressed before. He does not feel comfortable talking with his medical provider in Canada anymore about depression because of this.
Wow.
Because here's the thing, the mental illness category, it's if you have a mental illness and you think that it will be too hard for them to cure you of it, you can die. Suicidality is a mental illness. Wanting to kill yourself is a sign of mental unwellness. And now in Canada, if the time it would take you to get unsuicidal is too much for you, they may prescribe you suicide as the treatment for your suicidality.
Yeah, it's just we're going to live to see far worse things, I believe, but we're already seeing them. Like, this is something brand new, really.
It's almost laughable. I mean, it's expressly laughable because it's just, as if you walk into a doctor's office, it's like, hey, doc, I've been thinking of killing myself. Well, have you considered doing it? It's the polar opposite of the Hippocratic Oath. It's literally just, I've been thinking about dying a lot recently. It's like, oh, have you tried the new Suicide Chamber 9000?
It's like old age has been eliminated, like just protecting the human dignity at the end of one's life and
at the beginning of one's life.
Yeah, it's just
it's a cult of youth. It's a cult of youth and a cult of health. This is the rational conclusion of what we've been doing. We have idealized the human body. We've deified the human body outside from its connection to the soul and outside of its connection from God. This is what we did with bodybuilding shows and with all of these depictions of these big, strong, strapping action movie stars with their insanely rippling muscles and this preoccupation with extending health well beyond its natural capability. We've created a religion that cannot conceive of anything outside of the concept of a healthy human person and views anything other than that as unacceptable. And the end result of that is a society that will bathe the streets in the blood of the innocent in order to preserve its false exterior appearance of unending health, wellness, and beauty.
Amen.
Need. And so basically Canada's turned into an international cautionary tale in about 24 months. And I don't think anybody is fully cognizant of how bad it's going to look just under a year from now if they do start permitting assisted suicide for those with mental illness. Because at that point, the only thing you'll need to be eligible for assisted suicide is feeling suicidal. So the government will be endorsing your cognitive distortions and will actually be facilitating and funding your own death. So Canada's not doing great. Should actually consider legalizing assisted suicide for infants under the age of 1 with like severe disability, etc. And as you know,
this is what they were doing in the Netherlands. The other thing they brought up with the Netherlands is they've legalized it from the ages of 0 to 12. Now, they're doing that because they're under the impression that like children should be able to make their own decisions with this. And this is one of the elements of the whole debate relating to transgenderism that people haven't thought about. If a child can consent to medical transition, then they can consent to all medical procedures. And if you live in a society where killing yourself is a medical procedure, then a child can consent to that. If a child can consent to an abortion, then they can consent to suicide. And if they can consent to abortion without you being warned, well, you just imagine that terrifying call from the school in the middle of the day.
Yeah. It's really an evil society that doesn't actually hinder these things. It promotes them. It allows them. So it's the opposite of freedom. We've said this 1,000 times, but freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. It's being able to do what you ought. So governments should promote what you ought to do. That's their responsibility. Yeah.
Can't assist somebody in suicide below the age of 1. And so basically he just openly advocated for euthanizing babies. And one of the headlines that was really on point, but kind of jarring to read in a national newspaper was Canada cannot become a country that kills its babies. Now, of course, we already do up until 9 months through abortion. But like that was as a headline in a national newspaper, right? Not on some pro-life.
See, really, it started at
Hold on a second, I gotta grab something.
Yeah, I'll continue. So it started at conception. The human life was lost there. People don't call the fetus a human baby. So we've moved past the fetus, and now we're going all the way to middle-aged people, and then even the older people with euthanasia. A lot of people don't see a problem with euthanizing the old. They believe that suffering is this terrible thing, like just a natural human death is a terrible thing to have. So they believe with this euthanasia that it's a peaceful way to go out.
Well, euthanasia literally means good death in Greek.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's where the term comes from. They took the term for positive and the term for death, and they made it good death.
Is that a thing of cheese right there?
A calzone.
We'll put this in the bloopers or not. It's a good moment. But yeah, we'll continue watching. We're about done here.
Site or socially conservative oriented media outlet. No, this was straight up in a national newspaper. I think that even with that, the thing that genuinely terrifies me the most.
If this happens in America, you're going to get to the point where CNN is sitting there. It's like, guys, no, we can't do this. You're going to have the people that were banging the war drum for abortion the loudest saying, no, there needs to be a line. Because the thing is, like I keep saying, we live in a society that is running on the fumes of Christianity. We have enough common sense to say it is wrong to do certain things. Why do we think
the natural law, like the natural law removed from divine revelation, just humans have a natural sense of what's good and bad. And that's what C.S. Lewis talked a lot about in The Abolition of Man. Just like this natural law imprinted on the human heart of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, it's not just that. We have the natural law, and we have, as a society here in the West, some amount of the law of God.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a vestigial memory of it. And that's what, if anything, has been holding back the worst of this. Because in ancient Rome, there was no law that stopped you from killing a slave that was old, or from killing a slave's child because you didn't want to feed it or care for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stopping you from doing that to your own child if you wanted to. You could just expose your children out in the woods and they could die. I mean, while it would be considered socially wrong to kill your aging parents, there's enough writing in the Latin texts about, aged parents being left abandoned that we know it wasn't uncommon to just leave your old people out to die. Certainly, there's nothing wrong with killing the old people and children of non-Romans.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see this come back as we become a more and more pagan society. The question is just whether or not that vestigial Christianity can hold us back before we cross a precipice.
Yeah. It's a very thin veil, just of how evil humans have become and how good they claim to be. They claim these are the best times to live in. Look at all this technology. Well, just look at the world wars last century, which killed more people than the past 5 centuries in war combined. And then in the 20th century, it was mostly civilians that were killed, way less than the soldiers. They were just bombing cities, bombing average people, families. So it's an illusion. I think we're kind of waking up to it now. We will be forced to wake up to it as we progress in time, as we see the natural ends of all these ideas, these utopian ideas.
Well, it's the same thing with the television. We think that it's providing us this amazing new way to consume information, but all it's doing is making it harder for us to consume any information at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the culture at large. It's deteriorating, living off the fumes, as you said.
As somebody who has mental illness running on both sides of his family, and one of my kids could easily have it just based on their genetics, is that they're also advocating for assisted suicide for what they call mature minors, which basically means somebody who's not old enough to drink, vote, or drive, but somebody who is apparently mature enough to make the decision to opt for assisted suicide. And in the parliamentary documents, it actually says that although we understand parents would be very opposed to this, we have to recognize.
Exactly. Where are the parents? That's all I have to say.
Their rights are being taken away. I mean, this is the thing. The argument up until now,
they're being usurped by the state.
Yeah, and the argument up until now for homeschooling has been like, oh, well, society's not the best for Christianity. It might be a good idea to give your kids a more Christian-friendly environment of formation. You don't know how those catechism teachers might be at Catholic school, and you certainly don't know what the public school teachers might say there. The argument now is that they will deform your child with surgery and drugs without telling you, like a freak show from, the book, The Man Who Laughs, from, not The Man Who Laughs, but in the book, The Smiling Man, I think it is, by this one French novelist I read. They'll deform you like some creature from a horrifying folklore story, and then they will offer you a good death by killing you without even telling your parents.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours, but we'll just
recognize that the right of that child to suicide would override their parents' desire to keep them around, which means that a euthanasia provider could go into the family home, could euthanize the child in the family home with the force of the state preventing the parents from intervening. And this is not some wild theory. You can read this in the doc. Once you read what the documents actually say, this is what they're advocating for. And so this genuinely terrifies me in a way that nothing's terrified me before. Like, as you know, I work for a pro-life organization. I've been working on issues like abortion for years. But this is an issue where I don't think those who support it fully realize what the implications are. And I don't think people who are ignoring this as another culture war issue at the top recognize that this will have a very real impact on their family at some point, especially because we have absolutely piss poor care for those who suffer from mental illness. And of course, coming out of COVID, we have a mental health pandemic.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Would you like this beautiful, very high quality?
All right, we'll stop right there. That'd be a good point to stop at.